The story you think you know about natural talent? Forget it. Because what actually happened to this man before he ever touched a professional ball is far stranger than anything you've heard. When he was 9 years old, growing up in a small Argentine town, his family received news that would change everything. Doctors noticed he wasn't growing at the rate other kids his age were. After a series of tests, the diagnosis came back clear: a growth hormone deficiency. His body simply wasn't producing enough of the hormone needed to build bone and muscle the way it should. The prognosis doctors gave his parents was brutal. Without treatment, he was projected to top out at under 4 feet 7 inches tall. For most kids, that's a medical footnote. For a future professional athlete, that's a career that ends before it begins. So what did the family do? This is where the story takes a turn most people never hear about. The only real option was hormone therapy, and it came with a price tag most families simply couldn't carry. His father worked in a steel factory. His mother cleaned houses part-time. The treatment ran around $1,500 a month, month after month, year after year. That's not a one-time cost. That's a financial weight most working families never recover from. And it wasn't just about money. Every single night, this 9-year-old boy had an injection placed into his leg. Picture that for a second. A child going to bed every night, not with a bedtime story, but with a needle. That's the part of his childhood nobody puts in the highlight reel. Then something unexpected happened. At just 13 years old, FC Barcelona spotted something in this small, undersized kid that made them willing to take an enormous gamble. They agreed to cover the cost of his treatment themselves. Think about what that actually meant. A professional club was betting serious money on a barely teenage boy with a documented medical condition, based on nothing but instinct and a handful of training sessions. That bet is one of the most underrated decisions in the history of the sport. But signing with Barcelona didn't just mean medical treatment. It meant entering one of the strangest, most disciplined environments in world football, a place called La Masia. Here's what most fans never picture when they imagine a young superstar in training. La Masia isn't some glamorous facility full of trophies and highlight reels. For years, it operated more like a boarding school crossed with a monastery. Boys as young as Messi were bused to local schools every single morning for standard academic classes: math, science, language, just like any other kid. Football training itself was capped at no more than 90 minutes a day, and every single night, lights were out by 10:30. Let that sink in. The player who would go on to become arguably the greatest footballer in history spent his formative years under a stricter bedtime than most teenagers experience at home. No late-night highlight reels, no flashy academy lifestyle, just classrooms, a tightly timed training window, and discipline enforced down to the half hour. This is the part of the story that gets buried under all the magic. Greatness, in Messi's case, wasn't built through unlimited football. It was built through structure most people would find almost boring. So the natural talent people talk about today, it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of a medical intervention, a club willing to gamble, and a kid who kept showing up every single night for that injection. Now let's talk about something else most people get completely wrong. What actually changed inside Messi's body around 2014, the year his career entered a completely different phase? Up until that point, Messi's diet looked like a lot of ordinary Argentine kids growing up. Pizza, processed food, the usual habits nobody thinks twice about. Then he started working with an Italian nutritionist named Giuliano Poser, and everything shifted. Here's the twist most people don't expect. It wasn't about adding some exotic superfood or secret supplement. Poser's entire approach was built around 5 incredibly ordinary ingredients: water, olive oil, whole grains, fresh fruit, and fresh vegetables. That's it. No miracle formula. Just ruthless consistency around basics most of us already know, but rarely follow. The part that surprised even longtime fans was what got cut, not what got added. Sugar was treated almost like a banned substance. Refined flour was minimized as much as possible. Even something as simple as the quality of wheat became something his team paid attention to. The result wasn't dramatic in the way people expect. There was no overnight transformation. But years later, in his mid-30s, an age when most professional footballers have already retired or are clearly declining, Messi was still performing at an elite level, still explosive, still scoring at a World Cup. The science behind that longevity wasn't a secret biohack. Now let's talk about his height, because this is where the science gets genuinely strange. Standing at 5'7", he's noticeably shorter than most elite forwards. Compare that to Ronaldo at 6'1", or Mbappe and Neymar, both around 5'10". For years, that height difference was treated as a weakness, a limitation he had to overcome. But sports scientists found something that flips that entire idea on its head. His center of mass sits at roughly 90 centimeters off the ground, significantly lower than most of his competition. And that lower center of mass does something measurable. It reduces what's called rotational inertia, which is essentially the resistance his body has to fight against when changing direction. In real numbers, this allows him to change direction up to 2 to 3/10 of a second faster than taller defenders trying to track him. That might sound tiny, but in football, matches are decided in fractions of a second, a defender arriving just a beat too late, a ball slipping past by inches. Shorter limbs mean less rotational resistance, which means faster footwork in tight spaces. A lower center of mass means a shorter distance for his body to react and recover. What looked like a disadvantage on paper turned out to be a physics advantage on the pitch. Now here's something most fans have never actually heard explained properly: the science behind his vision. People love saying he has eyes in the back of his head, that he sees passes before they're even open. Researchers at the University of Kassel in Germany, led by Professor Norbert Hagemann, decided to actually test this scientifically. They wanted to understand what was really happening when elite players read the game at that level. Here's where it gets interesting, because the result wasn't what anyone expected. The early assumption was that the best players simply had a wider field of vision, that they could physically see more of the pitch at once than average players. But when the data came back, that theory didn't hold up. The researchers themselves admitted they could not find a broader visual span in skilled players compared to less skilled ones. In other words, it's not his eyes doing something different, it's his brain processing what he sees in a completely different way. The advantage isn't physical, it's cognitive. And there's one more piece to this puzzle: his muscles. Those explosive bursts of speed, the way he accelerates from a near standstill and leaves defenders behind in half a second, that's not just instinct. Research on elite dribblers suggests players like him carry a higher proportion of fast-twitch muscle fibers, the type of muscle tissue built for short, explosive bursts of power rather than sustained endurance. Those fibers are exactly what allow that sudden acceleration and deceleration that makes him nearly impossible to predict in tight spaces. So let's put the whole picture together. A 9-year-old boy whose growth had stopped, a medical prognosis that said he'd never reach 5 feet tall, a family that couldn't afford the only treatment that could save his career, a club willing to bet everything on a kid nobody else wanted to risk on, short legs that turned out to be a physics advantage, a brain that reads the game differently than anyone else's, and muscle fibers built for the exact kind of explosive movement that defines his entire style of play. Every single thing the world once called a weakness turned out to be part of what made him impossible to stop. Maybe greatness was never about overcoming a disadvantage. Maybe it was hiding inside it the whole time.